Welcome to our ADRA update. We're excited you've decided to join us, and I know it's been a month since we've connected with you, but we're glad to be back. Throughout that month long, we've journeyed from coast to coast across Canada, and it was great to meet each and every single person that we were able to connect with. We know that we're looking at stepping into a very busy fall season, and let me just give you a few little highlights from that season. So right now we have active a significant major emergency response campaign. I'm sure you've been watching news forecasting connected to the wildfires that have erupted these past 2 months this summer across Canada. And so ADRA Canada in particular has been responding in Nova Scotia, in Alberta, in BC, in the Yukon, Northwest Territories. And so we'll be bringing an update connected to that wildfire response. We also have coming up our Thanksgiving campaign. And in this Thanksgiving campaign, we're going to be talking significantly about food security. And then also rolling right into our 40-year anniversary. So on October 10, we'll launch 40 days of praying for the countries that ADRA is active in, 40 days of being out and working in our communities with our churches, and just culminating on November 15 in our soiree event that honors the last 40 years with you, our donors, supporters, and partners. This ADRA update, we're going to be connecting with Anita Odondi, and she's going to be talking to us about emergencies far and wide around the globe, and also our new Senior National Program Manager, Ray Fankhauser. So we've got an exciting update for you. Let's jump right in. For our first guest for this ADRA update, we have Anita Odondi. She is our Emergency Management Director. And I'm sure if any of you have been paying attention to the news, there have been disasters and conflict erupting all over the world. And so we're just looking, Anita, welcome today.
Thank you. Thank you, Teresa.
Yes, we're looking for an update. What is happening and how is ADRA active right now around the globe connected to disasters and emergencies?
Yes, thank you. Sometimes I just have to switch off the TV because it's one disaster after another.
Yes.
And everyone can testify. Man-made, natural, quick onset, protracted ones that we never expected would go on forever, it seems. So right now, Ukraine is still going on, still very fresh. People are still struggling on a daily basis.
They are.
ADRA is still there because ADRA was there many years before the war.
Yes.
And our colleagues are on the ground. They are providing cash because it's the most appropriate way to provide support right now.
Yeah.
But there are those that also need direct food. Psychosocial support is a key in Ukraine, and ADRA is providing that. We have Syria. Syria is still rebuilding from the earthquake.
Of course.
And so we do have ADRA Syria on the ground. We have our colleagues there that are providing food, direct food, and psychosocial support, medical support, water, sanitation, and hygiene because things were destroyed. That is still going on and will go on for many years because the destruction was big. We do have countries like Sudan where it's even difficult to enter right now for those who left.
Wow,
but
it's been many months.
It's been very many months, and it's still really bad. The displaced people are in hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in the neighboring countries. So our colleagues in Sudan are working hard to reach those in need because not many NGOs can be there at this time when it's needed most. And also working with displaced people and refugees in Sudan, in Chad. ADRA is also on the ground doing that work. Yemen, not heard in the news because of other disasters that have taken over, but Yemen is still quite in a difficult situation, and ADRA is on the ground. I could go on and on.
Yes.
There are so many countries. One last one that I'll mention, not because it's the last one going through disaster, but because of time, Niger, which also just recently went into a situation that made it difficult for aid to enter the country, as you probably have seen in the news. But our colleagues are soldiering on and still continuing with our projects there.
Wow. You know, it's interesting because you wonder if you will see somehow an end in sight. And it seems like some of them are becoming longer than that 2 or 3 month response mark, right?
Absolutely.
Just because of the nature of the devastation or the conflict that happens that continues in some of these countries, right?
Yes, yes.
And so it's amazing that ADRA can be there to respond because of our network connections.
It's a blessing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so even when I speak to others, they don't have accessibility into countries where the needs are so great, but it's good for us because we have people right there.
Yes. We have the ADRA network because we have local offices there. And we also have the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which is always on the ground. We do have some countries where we do not have the church on the ground. And thankfully we have ADRA there, and we work with volunteers of all religious affiliations. So we praise God for that blessed opportunity to serve in a time such as this.
Wow. Thank you so much, Anita, for bringing us an update today. And we just continue to pray for your team of really just experts who are bringing together multiple peoples and multiple resources to really service the needs around the globe when it comes to emergencies.
Thank you, Teresa. God bless.
Thank you. Our second guest today is our new Senior National Program Manager. ADRA Canada is excited to welcome Ray Fankhauser. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you.
It's good to have you here with us today. And so I'm just going to start with just a very baseline question. Like, who is Ray? Our donors, our supporters, our viewers, they don't really know you. So what's your background and just a little bit about who you are?
Yeah. I am a diplomat by trade. So my career was working for the Canadian government abroad. So I've been to almost every continent, helping Canadians in a different capacity, obviously, in terms of their well-being, security, dealing with other governments, bilateral relations, and things like that. Though, of course, that type of experience does lend itself quite well to what we're doing here in ADRA, particularly in terms of leveling up our work here on the national front. So my background has allowed me to see ADRA from a different angle as well, because in some of Canada's development work, as you know, the government has been funding projects abroad. So I got to see a different side of that, sit in a different spot at the proverbial table. And now I get to do it from this side.
Yes. So you come with a wealth of experience that you're going to lend to your new role. And so speaking about that new role, just give us some insights a little bit, let us catch the vision, Ray, of where exactly national program is going over the next 3 years.
So it's great that you asked that question, because we're right at that point of the strategic cycle, right? Yes. And I think the most important thing when you want to grow an organization is to have a strategy that you can peg all of your initiatives to. So with the national program, it's really about building ADRA as a household name right here in Canada, right? Yes. When we look at the symbol, even if we think, what is in our mind, what goes through our mind when we see an ADRA symbol, a lot of people will still say that it's about distant locations and distant issues. Yes. And those are wonderful to deal with, and ADRA has a lot of experience with that. But now what we're seeing is that ADRA has a big role to play right here in Canada with the issues that we are facing. And, You might have a follow-up question on this, of course, but I can give you an overview as to some of the challenges that we're looking to face.
Please do. Please
Okay.
do.
Well, on the first front, I would say that in terms of becoming relevant, it's about being not just capable to respond to emergencies, but to actually be prepared for emergencies, right? And there is a fine line there, right? So our capacity is all about having resources in place. And when I say resources, it's actually a lot about people as well. Making sure that we have a contingent of volunteers who are appropriately trained and who understand what would be expected of them in an emergency situation, and to establish relevance in our communities on a daily basis as well. So I think that's the first part in terms of ADRA gaining that level of local relevance. Now, of course, what does that mean? What sorts of problems would ADRA be dealing with? Well, first of all, as we all know, there's food insecurity. So we're investing heavily in activities that support that. And of course, remember, most of these issues they don't exist in isolation, right? They're all interconnected. So when we speak about food insecurity, the next topic is migrant issues. Now, you can see the link right away with respect to that. A lot of you here in Canada have seen news, for example, of migrant populations who have been camped out even on the street in downtown Toronto. So when you go and you see on a first-hand basis what is going on there, obviously we can't look at that and not want to do something. So we have started to bring in some targeted programs and activities that are aimed, first of all, at the nutritional needs of migrant populations. But what we're looking at from a strategic point of view is how do we assist in every stage of a migrant's experience? It's not just about arriving and finding food or even a place to live. It's about what processes can you put in place to ensure that they can have a successful life cycle here in Canada.
We're talking about processing through immigration with them, you know, just setting some of those foundational elements, right, to set them up for success. So this would be an entire refugee or IDP or migrant program as an initiative, yes?
That's right. And so again, when you're talking about cooperation, the idea in terms of our advocacy is to involve municipal authorities, community organizations, and provincial and federal authorities as well, because there are a lot of resources out there. The issue isn't always about whether there are resources. The question is how they're used and how they're directed. And ADRA can play a really big role in that.
Yeah. So the idea of advocacy. So that's where we desire our churches to assess what the needs are within their community, right?
Yes.
So Ray, just talk to us for a few moments about what that partnership kind of looks like in a little bit more detail connected to our local churches and how they can gain greater leverage from partnering with us as ADRA.
Yeah, obviously the church is a massive built-in network that we have, and we have a lot of people with excellent skills and excellent intentions as well, good faith. And so what we're doing is we're expanding our volunteer network in a structured way. So what we're doing is we're developing a talent inventory in our church network, which means that in any given region, we will know what churches can do in terms of their skills. Then we can equip churches based on the skills that they have. And we can design structured training so that we know that they have a certain knowledge base to deal with situations, so that they can be, so to speak, thrown into the fire, but already with their fire equipment on, right?
They're ready.
So, ready. So the idea is readiness, right? That's the watchword. So in the volunteer basis, what we're trying to do is develop a way across the country where we have a standardized view of what we can do. So if a church in Vancouver is dealing with a particular situation, we can understand what that means in the same way as we would in Halifax. That's the idea. And that's going to give us that national reach, and we'll become a lot less dependent on what headquarters in Newcastle, Ontario has to say, because we just don't have enough people to do that. right? The other thing to mention at this point, quite opportune, is that we are now going to be placing professional ADRA personnel across the country. So it's not going to be a situation where something happens and we send an ADRA person from Ontario to the site, as might be the case right now. The idea is if I have these professional individuals in each conference territory, they will be able to feed us valuable information on a constant basis. They will be able to manage our volunteer teams. They will be able to give us a heads up on relations with local governments and Indigenous communities and all of those other key aspects of maintaining a strategy.
Yes, sounds great and very intentional for how we can work more collaboratively together in a way that sends us forward and not having to be chaotic or scrambling in a moment's notice, right?
Yeah.
So talk for just a few moments with us, Ray, about what's happening right now connected to our wildfires this summer and in BC. Word on the street is you're headed out there tomorrow.
Yeah, well, in this case, the word on the street is correct. It's not one of those nasty errant gossips. I am going to be getting on a plane early tomorrow morning to go out to BC. Maybe what I should highlight with respect to that is ADRA does have some experience dealing with these types of situations. You might remember, for example, the Lytton fires in 2021 and some of the other wildfires that happened, for example, in Nova Scotia earlier in the year.
BC 2016 even.
Absolutely. Yeah. So ADRA has been involved in many different ways, whether it is in-kind assistance or even shelter for evacuees and so on. But this one is a little bit different. Allow me to introduce a new type of activity, or at least a new type of support. We are actually doing targeted cash assistance in this particular situation, and we have obtained for the first time from the U.S. government, USAID. You may be familiar with USAID. That's the development arm of the U.S. government. They have given us a significant grant, which will allow us to go into these areas, take a measure of what the needs are from a financial perspective. We all know what cost of living issues are, even without an evacuation. So just imagine how expensive things are. We're now in a position to assess that situation and provide targeted support to the people who need it most. So I'm going out to BC to establish that, as well as a few other things. So I know that it's going to be a whirlwind 5 days.
Yes, yes. Wonderful. Wow, wow. So boots on the ground. You'll be lending your experience as well as just rallying the troops, because from what I understand, we have regional individuals out there as well as a volunteer team that's active. So we wish you all the best. And thank you so much for providing us with this update.
It's always a pleasure, and there's more where that came from.
I was just going to say, I know, in the future, we will have you on here again. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Teresa.
So for my third guest today, it is someone who is not foreign to being behind the camera or in front of the camera. It's our multimedia specialist, Frank Spangler. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes, and he's come on in particular to talk really about our 40 years. So this year is ADRA's 40 years of justice, compassion, and love. And the official General Conference vote took place on October 10 of 1983. And we've invited you along for this ADRA update, Frank, because you've been, I think, the longest standing ADRA Canada employee. Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure I could claim employee status, but I did start as a contractor for ADRA in 1989, going out doing photography and video acquisition and putting some stories together that we send out to the churches. And so some of our supporters might recognize my voice because I've been booming over their speakers for the last 33 years now.
Wow. That's amazing. So I've asked Frank to look through the archives of his memories and to come up with just, how we've developed. What does that look like over these last X number of years, 40 years? And are there any kind of highlight reels that you think that you can think of?
Oh, there's so many experiences. I think I'm going to have to write a book one of these days.
You must.
Maybe when I enter.
I'll be one of your editors.
Okay, at retirement. I've got a lot of photographs too. Make a nice coffee table book, I think. Nice. I think the thing that stands out from my perspective of this long time period is how much ADRA has grown in the way that we do development. It's been wonderful to see the way ADRA has grown and become more professional.
Yes.
We sent our people back to school, and we have really now reached a point that is a very professional approach to development and emergency relief. And so it's nice to see that change over the years.
Look at that, just really historical context, right, of how we've grown and developed and connected to a real beautiful representation of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Yes.
And so tell us, are there any kind of memories that maybe in your mind that anchor connected to, I don't know, just a story? Do you have a story that maybe is your favorite over these last, you said 33 years,
33
right?
33 years, yeah.
Maybe your favorite story, Frank?
Well, after 9/11, there was a few weeks there where you just couldn't travel at all.
Right.
And yet I was scheduled to go and travel to Bangladesh. And I think I was one of the first people on a plane after 9/11 headed to Bangladesh. But there was a little bit nervous about being in Bangladesh. It's a Muslim country. And I remember Oliver Loftenbrook was the country director at the time. And he was just a little concerned about my being maybe in a ADRA vehicle going up to the project. So he put me on the back of a motorbike.
Oh, he did.
And it was like a 4-hour journey with my camera bag and tripod on the back of somebody's bike. And so that was an experience. And I just kind of got there, and the U.S. went into Afghanistan. And so Oliver called and said, "You need to get out of here." And it turned out it wasn't a big response or a big problem in Bangladesh, but you just never knew what would happen.
Of course.
So he said it's important that you, as an American-looking guy, get out. And so he put me on a plane, and I went over to Nepal, and perfectly fine, no problem filming in Nepal. One of the stories, I guess, of many that I could share. But
what a great experiential story. Wow, something you will never forget.
So what's happening with the 40 years?
Yes, so the 40 years, we're starting out, and I said it a little bit, right? The 40 days of praying for the different countries that ADRA works in, and then the 40 days of being in community, community service connected to our churches, as well as kind of little mini videos that we'll be sending out to our churches every single week from October 10 until November 15. And you're working on those, in fact, Frank, right? Yes. 3 to 4 minutes that will happen between Sabbath school and church, as well as really culminating in that just 40-year experience at our soiree. So we've invited, mayors that are around us. We've invited MPs. We've invited Michael Kruger from ADRA International, as well as our ADRA Canada staff and our presidents from our conferences, as well as our executive secretaries and our treasurers, our board members, some of our valued donors across Canada have been invited. So approximately 150 people at this soiree, and there'll be a program, and we're just going to really talk about, celebrating you, our partners, our supporters, our donors, on behalf of these last 40 years of justice, compassion, and love. So we're excited. And we've kind of also anchored it in our Thanksgiving campaign too, which will lead right into that October 10 launch date. And our Thanksgiving campaign is on food security, but it also proclaims our 40 years. And then the final element will be messenger articles throughout that will be connected to our 40 years all the way until December. And then December, our gift catalog will highlight our timeline of the 40 years, as well as just really transformative gifts connected to those 40 years.
Well, that sounds exciting. You know, something I heard the other day in one of our meetings was that there's a real push on right now in relation to this 40 years as well, to have our supporters who haven't already done so move towards a monthly commitment or a monthly donation. And I've been wondering, you know, I always do it kind of at the end of the year. Once a year I give my, you know, usually on December 31. But why is it important that people, our supporters, give on a monthly basis?
So what we're saying for this monthly donation is be a part of the next 40, right? The next 40 years of justice, compassion, and love. And the reason is because then we know, we can rely that those monies are coming in every single month. And it helps us to commit to greater beneficiaries worldwide, right here at home as well as overseas, because we have an expected amount coming in every single month, and we know what that is. So, for example, myself, I'm a monthly donor. So I don't just give at the end of the year. So I'm a monthly donor that says consistently, this is money that's coming in connected to helping and impacting people's lives. And so it really gives us a sense of stability. And so that's why we're saying, maybe take that one-time gift and just spread that out. It oftentimes for people, it tends to be a little bit more manageable when you do it month to month, right? As opposed to just that one-time give. And so we're asking our donors, become a monthly donor. You will also gain access to our Angels Impact newsletter every single month, which really demonstrates impact of that donor dollar and shows you where we're highlighting various projects and stories and impact and statistics and data and lots of good things in that Angels Impact newsletter.
Oh, that sounds good. Now, how do I become a monthly donor?
Oh. So here's the next part. We have just launched a more donor-centric website.
Oh, okay.
So we have donation links wherever you go. And if you go to one of those donation links and you click that, it will take you to a pop-up. And that pop-up, you can choose to give a one-time gift or, with a little heart beside it, become a monthly donor.
A monthly donor, okay.
That's right.
So if I give one donation and click on the monthly, then it becomes automatic.
It becomes automatic.
Okay.
And then once a year, you will receive your receipt connected to those monthly donations.
Okay.
And
well,
so, yes.
I'm going to do it.
Good.
And I challenge our other supporters to do the same.
That's right.
All of my friends out there, become a monthly supporter of ADRA.
That's right. Same. I'll do the same push. Mine too. Thank you so much, Frank, for being on with us.
It was great to be here.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us for this ADRA update. It was great to connect with you again. We'll be back next month, so look into your inbox. We're also asking that you follow us on all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, now X, as well as Vimeo and YouTube and adratv.com. And so any way we can connect with you and really thank you as our supporters, our viewers, our donors. We are grateful for what you do on behalf of ADRA Canada because it means greater impact in people's lives. See you next month.